White Show.
Well, allow me to tell you a little fable, if you will. And if you bear with me, we'll try to make this as amusing as possible. Once upon a time, there was a factory. Now, the factory was called the United States of America, and this factory produced a lot of goods and services, and was pretty good to the people who were working in the factory. Well, except one day, a plant manager decided, I'm going to bring a whole lot more people into the factory. And these people were what we call unidentified foreign opportunists, or UFOs. Trouble is, they didn't come into the factory to work. They came in to get free stuff. Get money, get a place to live, get health care, get all kinds of stuff. And because the factory manager at that time thought, well, I get those kind of people in there, they're going to keep me around forever. Well, it didn't work out that way. And unfortunately, a lot of the plant workers got together and says, hey, that factory manager, we're tired of him, he's gone. He tried to get somebody else in his place, but that didn't work either. Well, all along, it turns out that another part of the factory, another section, another floor in the northeast side of our factory, suddenly getting stuff showing up in the skies. They call them drones. And everybody got all upset saying, something's going wrong on the northeast plant section. What are we going to do about it? And then suddenly everybody forgot about the problem we had with those unidentified foreign opportunists that came in. Turns out that it was millions. Now, when they came in, they tried to say, well, we're going to give them a chance, a hearing in front of an official of the factory, gave them a piece of paper, said, you show up at this time at this place. 92% of them UFO folks never showed up. Then it turns out that about 2 million of them didn't even report to anything, were running away, and we don't know where they are on the factory floor. They're somewhere. Well, apparently, there's certain sections of the factory that are saying, we're a haven for those folks because we need, gardeners, we need people to pick the fruits, the veggies, except most of those folks don't do that stuff. They just want to get the free stuff and live out in the hog. Well, so now we got a problem, folks. Got a big problem. We got one part of the plant saying, hey, we got these things flying around the skies. We don't know what they are. And some weird person on TV said they're sniffing out something. I don't know about that. But I can tell you this. Don't forget about all them UFOs that we got, because that's going to be a problem for our factory. Eventually, it's going to come back and bite us big time. We just haven't seen it yet because heaven knows what they could have brought onto the factory floor. We don't know. And as for those areas that are hiding them all out, heck, we got one whole section hiding them out. Can't have that. Well, it turns out we have a brand new plant manager, just been elected by the employees, and he brought in a whole new group of people, his wranglers. He said, hey, we're going to fix this stuff. And you know what? I believe he will. Now, we got to get the problem solved, get those bad UFO people out of this country, and go back to being the land that we are. We're the greatest factory and the greatest plant in the world because of goods and services we produce. This is where people want to come to. But if you want to come to our factory and work, you're going to have to work. Those are the rules. So right now, that's where we stand, America. Don't worry about them things up there flying in the sky. Worry about a bigger problem. Them UFOs we got in the South. Got to solve that problem first, because if you don't solve that problem, everything else is going to get worse that you don't even see yet. Just something to think about. Well, recently on CNN, a lady appeared by the name of Sheila Johnson. She happens to be black. She's the owner of the Washington Mystics of the WNBA. Also, she's a co-chairman of the NBA team and the NHL team, the hockey team in Washington, and the NBA basketball team. But she was talking about Caitlin Clark being named the Athlete of the Year by Time Magazine. And she said it was wrong. She said that the WNBA should have been named the Athlete of the Year and not Caitlin Clark. And she doesn't like the idea that she was given a $28 million contract by Nike because she said it's going to cause racism in their particular league. And what she said is, she said, why couldn't they have put the WNBA on the cover and said the WNBA is the League of the Year? And then she went on to say, when you single out one player, it creates a hard feelings. So now that you're hearing stories of racism within the WNBA, and I don't want to hear that, she said. Well, the racism is coming from the players. They don't like the idea that Caitlin Clark is playing in the WNBA because, well, she's white. Majority of the WNBA and the women's WNBA also happens to be black. Sorry, it's just the way it is. But she doesn't like the idea that Caitlin Clark is being singled out. Well, let me put it in perspective. The reason people are drawn to watching Caitlin Clark is because she was a phenom. When she played in college at the University of Iowa, she was a scoring machine. Matter of fact, they're going to be retiring her number. She was that good. Yes, she went against some great players, and Sheila Reese, I believe, was one of those. And yes, that Ms. Reese and her team did win the NCAA, and the Iowa Hawkeyes did not. But does that mean she's a better player? Not necessarily. It's what puts cheeks in the seats, man. What puts people in the stands. Now, let's put this out in context. When the Fever came to your city, ma'am, Washington, D.C., normally your venue your ladies play in is 4,200 seats. When the Fever came to your town, you had to open up the big coliseum that the NBA team plays in because it holds 20,000 people, and you filled it. Normally in your gym that holds 4,200. Now, when Miss Reese came to your town to play your team, she only put 10,000 cheeks in the seats. Sorry, it's a matter of numbers. That's what happened. Is Caitlin Clark the best of the best? Right now, in the eyes of many people, she's what they want to watch. And let's put it in perspective. When Larry Bird joined the WNBA, he was a white kid going and playing the WNBA, and he didn't win the national championship. Magic Johnson did, rather. But I watched the NBA because you wanted to watch Larry Bird play, and I did. But when Michael Jordan joined the NBA, I wanted to watch Michael Jordan play, not because of the color of skin, because he was great. Larry Bird, Michael Johnson, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and Michael, they were all great. That's why you watch it. That's why people want to watch. So, ma'am, I'm sorry that you said what you said. Fortunately, it appeared on CNN, and virtually nobody watches that. But the truth is in the pudding. The best of the best will always shine. That's why the cream always rises to the top. And this time, it did. Well, the 2024 election happened about 8 weeks ago, and let's say why the Democrats lost and why the Republicans won. Many months ago, I made my first predictions about this, so I said certain things were going to happen. Doggone enough if they didn't. But let me explain to you what I'm talking about. In the beginning, everybody was saying, oh, this is going to be a nail-biter. You know, this is going to be so close. It wasn't close at all. As it turns out, it was a walk-away. Donald Trump took 312 electoral votes, which is massive in the world of landslides. Also won the popular vote by a pretty good stretch. Now, people would say, no, that couldn't happen. Well, it did. But why did people feel that way? What went on? What happened? Well, it turns out the Democrats and Kamala Harris decided to go use the cultural issues. And she was hammered for it. And cultural issues was like, allowing boys to play on girls' teams, go in girls' locker rooms, transgender issues. And they played up that big time. So the GOP said, okay, fine, we're going to run commercials showing what Kamala said about this. And we're going to say, hey, we're not for that. We're not going to do that. And that stuck with a lot of people. That was very, very important to a lot of folks. Now, they used that pretty much the last portion of their campaign. I would say probably the last third of the campaign was strictly cultural issues. And that's what they went with. And then you realize that Kamala had a budget over $1 billion. Well, she spent approximately $570 million of that $1 billion budget was spent on pro-abortion. I said this months ago, that was going to be what they were going to play the campaign on, and that's exactly what they did. Pro-abortion. Trouble is, people are looking at that and going, hey, the Supreme Court's already decided that. You can't say we're going to have a national abortion law. It's already been decided. The Supreme Court's going to strike that down. People actually understood that and let their own states decide. Some states said yes, some states said no. But it didn't work. That's what they placed on. And the biggest thing was the leftists, the radical activist leftists took over the Democratic Party. And that's what happened, folks. They took the party over, and as a result, well, the election turned out the way it did. Trump won more women, more Hispanics, more Asians. He won blacks. He took everybody. It all came over. Mostly it was essentially on cultural issues, transgender kind of things. People going, nah, I wasn't part of that. Well, how's that going to fare out in the future, folks? Let me ask you this. Well, if the Democrats still stay wedded to that concept of the leftists, the activists on the left, if they stay with that, it might not work out real well. As a matter of fact, it might work out real badly. Now, there's a fellow named Glenn Youngkin became governor of Virginia because he took the far-right policy and won in a Democrat state, which was Virginia, became their governor. And some other people in other states, let me give you an example. Seth Moulton, Democrat of Massachusetts, said he didn't want his daughters playing with transgender athletes. All the other Democrats in his state beat him up. The chairman of the Texas Democratic Party, Gilberto Hinojosa, he said the same thing, and he was forced out of his job in Texas. So the deal is, folks, if the Democrats keep the activists, the left-wing activist thing going, they ain't going to win. And they ain't going to win for a very long time. Because America said certain things we'll put up with and certain things we don't. And in 2024, America spoke, and Trump ended up winning, and the Democrats took a massive, I say a massive defeat. Now you know. Just thought I'd pass that along. Well, here it is, December 17th, and nobody still really knows what's going on with those drones that have been seen in on the East Coast over places like New Jersey and New York and various other particular states on the East Coast. So, allow me to give you my thoughts, my feeling, my wisdom on what I think it is. And here it is. The United States is way, way behind other countries when it comes to drones. And I mean way behind. China's 10 years ahead of us. As I've said earlier, drones are already being used over in the Ukraine. Russia's using them, Ukraine's using them. And down south on our border, Mexico, the cartels are using them to watch the border to see where the soft spots are, where nobody's watching anything, so they can smuggle people and drugs across. We are in desperate need of better drones, more high-tech drones, and drones that are capable of doing a whole lot more stuff. Now, so how do we do it? Well, we can contact companies, regular, plain old commercial companies, like major manufacturers and some smaller manufacturers, and say, look, we have needs, but our needs are certain that we have to be able to do certain things with drones. We have learned in fighting in the Middle East that we're fighting, door to door, close stuff. They need drones to be able to get down, look at things, move fast, make a lot of decisions. Are some drones AI driven? Probably. Or drones that we need to send out and have somebody run a bunch of drones, control a whole bunch of drones at the same time. Whole lot of specifications, rather, and what companies could make them. Well, believe it or not, there's probably a lot of companies that can do that. They have their drones that they make. Everybody's doing cool stuff. So the government says, okay, we're going to test everybody's stuff. And everybody submits their drones and their various drone-type aircraft, if you will. And really, these are, short takeoff landing, vertical takeoff landing, pretty heavy stuff. And you see all those drones out there with the red and green and white lights on them. Those folks are position indicators. They are required by law. The FAA requires planes to have those lights as position indicators. So those are regular commercial units. They are not owned by the government. They are being tested by the government. They can be tested by the CIA. Who knows? CIA is not supposed to operate in the United States. So you're going to deny it exists. You're going to say, well, we don't know. We're not sure, but what they're saying is, well, they're commercial, they're regular stuff. They're not ours, they're saying, and they're not. They don't belong to the U.S. government. Everything's being tested by various companies. And some of those vertical and takeoff landing aircraft, yeah, they're testing those out, who may have someone riding inside. They're pilot-driven. Someone riding inside. They've got their own control of a whole bunch of drones flying around them. Everything's being tested to find out who's got the cool stuff the government can see about buying. So right now, folks, they're just being tested, and they're being put through a whole lot of tests, and the government's going to deny everything because the government doesn't own anything. They're just testing everybody else's stuff. That's my theory, folks. Let's see if it turns out to be correct.
Well, a lot of the heavy politics we talk about, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. How about a little romance politics? A little bit on the dirt side, if you will. All right, if you haven't heard about this, here's the latest skinny you need to know. Donald Trump Jr. He is roughly 44 years of age, divorced. And back in 2018, he happened to meet a lady. A lady's name was Kimberly Guilfoyle. Now, Kimberly Guilfoyle used to be on The Five on Fox, if you remember. She was in the same chair that Judge Jeanine now occupies. But anyway, she's a very trained, she's an attorney, she's a smart lady. She previously was married to the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Well, anyway, she divorced him, met Donald Jr., and a relationship struck up. 2 years later, they announced that they were engaged in 2020. But since the 2024 election, apparently something was going on that you and I and the public didn't know about. There was somebody else who came into the scene down in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Her name is Bettina Anderson. Now, Ms. Bettina Anderson is a socialite. She's a daughter of a wealthy family down in Florida. She's 38 years of age, blonde, attractive, and strangely enough appeared in a picture when there was Donald Jr. and Ms. Guilfoyle at a convention, Republican convention, and right behind them was Miss Anderson. I can't explain to you how that happened. No way of knowing that. But here she is. Here's another picture of her. Well, apparently the engagement is over, because Donald Jr. has now been seen cavorting with Ms. Bettina Anderson at a restaurant, canoodling, if you know what that means. Well, now Ms. Guilfoyle, you say, well, what are they going to do with her? She has been appointed to become the next ambassador to the country of Greece. And I didn't know if Guilfoyle is a Grecian name, but she looks Greek. So she is being sent across the pond to be the ambassador of Greece, appointed by Donald Trump, who, from whatever words you're hearing out of the White House, was not exactly enamored with Ms. Guilfoyle because of her style, mode of dress, whatever, and the fact that she was 10 years older than his son. That's kind of like cougar territory to some folks. So anyway, the deal is over. Kimberly Guilfoyle is now the ambassador to Greece, and Donald Trump Jr. is now seeing Ms. Bettina Anderson, a socialite from South Florida. All is apparently good in the world of politics, romance, and the world of, the Trump family. Just a little something for you to know that maybe you didn't know. Lighthearted, maybe. Romantic, not sure of that. But hey, you got to have everything that goes on every place. Sort of like Peyton Place, you know? This is it for now.
Well, the chances are you've heard about that terrible shooting that took place in Madison, Wisconsin. A number of students at a Christian school were shot, gunned down, a teacher was killed, and there were a number of fatalities. And here's the whole deal. Now, when I first heard that story, I thought, oh man, another Columbine, another school type shooting. Some boy, gets whatever, and suddenly goes in and starts shooting people. And then I found out something I didn't know. The shooter at this Christian school was a 15-year-old girl. Her name was Natalie Rupno. 15 years old. How did she get a hold of a semi-automatic pistol, which what apparently she used, 9 millimeters, what they're saying, and go into a study hall, which is what I understand it was, a study hall, and gun down and kill a teacher and another student? Was that student what, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend? I don't know. But a number of kids are already in the hospital in critical condition. The total number of deaths, I haven't totally been determined yet because we don't know how those other kids that are in critical condition are going to turn out. But a 15-year-old girl, that, folks, is unheard of. And yet, is anybody saying anything about this? Oh, if it's a boy doing this, let's look into this, let's look into that. What's a boy doing? Nobody is saying a word about a 15-year-old girl because everybody's going, girls don't shoot people, do they? Well, in this case, she did. Now, is this Mean Girls? Is this bullying going on? This girl was bullied? Unfortunately, her parents are very, very much saddened about this. And you can imagine, your kid goes out and shoots somebody, how would you feel? Pretty doggone bad. But what would drive a 15-year-old girl to get a gun, and I don't know where she got it, maybe from her parents is my guess, and go to a school and start gunning people down? And then ultimately, she turned the gun on herself and killed herself. What was she trying to prove? Who was she going after? What's the story going on here? Right now, we don't know any of those things. Everything right now is supposition and a guess. But she was 15. Her name was Natalie Rupno. Her parents are cooperating, and God bless them for that. But this is totally different, folks. This is not a boy going in and shooting up a girl. This is a girl, 15 years old, into a Christian school, gunning people down. Where are we going, America? Where are we going? Well, the 2024 election is over, and now all they got to do is count the ballots, right? Well, here's the deal. The way our process works in the Constitution, people are not elected in office necessarily by popular vote. That's not the way things happen in America under our Constitution. You have to have a certain number of electoral votes. That was put in by the founders, saying we want to make sure everybody is treated fairly and everybody has an equal opportunity, rather than the population centers controlling who gets into office. And that's what they did. Well, now to win the presidential election, you had to have 270 electoral votes. Donald Trump got 312, more than enough that he needed, in pretty much what many would consider to be a landslide. But he also won the popular vote. But here's the deal. Now they have to count up those votes and certify them. So here's where we stand. Right now, in the states across America, the electors who are appointed by the political parties in that particular state, their electors are appointed. They get together, usually down at the state capitol, and they say, okay, we're going to cast our ballot because they each get one ballot. And here in Indiana, we have 11. So those 11 electors would meet in Indianapolis, cast their ballot for the president, saying, yeah, we're affirming that he won the election. So that's saying to the state, yeah, we believe he won the election, fair and square. There's the 11 votes. Now it has to go to Washington, D.C. Well, back in the 1700s, there weren't roads, there weren't freeways, there wasn't internet, there wasn't telephone, telegraph, whatever. It took a long time for things to happen. You had to put it on a horse and buggy and whatever and go from the farthest state all the way to where the capital was and turn in your voting information. It took a while. That's why the whole thing lasted about 3 months. So, well, now once the electors of each state sign off and say, yeah, that's who we're going with, that list of electors, that certification ballot is sent to Washington, D.C. And there it goes to the Senate, and the House and Senate both, they get the documentation. And they look at all the numbers that come in from all the states, and they have to agree. And then they have to certify that, yes, everybody did their job, everybody sent in their votes, here's what the numbers are. This is the new president. That's what they have to do. Now, here's what's going to happen. It's going to go to Washington, and if the Democrats would have kept the House of Representatives or got it back, they were going to throw a stick in the mud and make this really difficult, claiming that Trump said insurrection can't be president. They would have fouled this thing up for weeks, maybe months. Who knows how long it could have been. But Jamie Raskin didn't get to do it because, well, the Democrats lost the House. Are they still going to try to put up objections and put things to votes and muck the mess up? Yes, they probably will. They better be careful because Trump has a mandate of the American public, and the more they make it look bad for themselves, people are going to say, I want nothing to do with their party. And that's happening. So what we're going to see now, once they decide, they vote on it, the House, the Senate, they both certify it, and then once it's certified, then the inauguration will take place on the 20th of January. That's why it all happens that way. It's all designed by time and the old days and how things were. But now you understand, this is how we select a president, and it has been going on since, well, the 1700s. Well, as you know, the so-called assassin of Mr. Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, was apprehended in Pennsylvania, has been brought back to New York, and a grand jury has charged him with everything you can think they can charge him with. First degree, second degree, I don't know how many degrees they're calling it. Charged him with everything. But for some reason, somebody hired one of the top attorneys in New York, and I mean a big-time power attorney, and one of those ones charging $1,000 an hour to represent him. I don't know who's paying for it, and it's none of my business. But here's something you should know. There was a GoFundMe type page. Do you realize that Mr. Mangione, that's Luigi Mangione, 26, he's had over $50,000 pledged to him. That's right, $50K. People said we're going to give this guy money for his defense. And here's an even bigger thing. A new poll was taken, and here's the part that really shocked me. This poll said that 41% of those under the age of 30 found shooting this guy was okay. You heard me right. 41% of those under the age of 30, 18 to 29, said it was acceptable to assassinate the head of this insurance company. Why? Well, because they don't like the cost of health insurance or the fact that they get thrown off their parents' health insurance at 26. I'm not sure all the reasons, but there it is. And remember, the health insurance situation we have is not the standard health insurance. You better go back a number of years to Obamacare. Remember when Obamacare was voted on? Nancy Pelosi came out and said, well, it's thousands of pages, but you can't read it until we pass it. That's what she said. You can't read this bill until it's passed. Once it was passed, people found out exactly how much it was going to cost. Remember, Obama said, oh, your health rates are going to go down. Everybody's going to get health care. It's going to be perfect, wonderful. It wasn't. The only thing that really happened on this thing, the rates went up because the amount of things that had to be covered by insurance increased. Yeah, they raised the age to 26 where you can stay on your parents' health insurance account. All of that became expensive. Now, I'm not saying that insurance companies weren't making money. They were. But when you get 41% of people under the age of 20, under the age of 30 saying it's okay to assassinate, kill health insurance company heads, what does that say to all the other company heads? What does that say to all the other managers, CEOs of companies? Well, if you don't like what he did, you can kill him. That's what we're dealing with, folks. So Mr. Mangione, Mario Mangione, he's got $50K in the bank for his attorney. And my guess is his attorney is going to go for guilty but mentally ill. I think that's about the only thing she's got left in her bag. Guilty but mentally ill. I don't know if they allow that in the state of New York, but there's now federal charges against this gentleman. So either way, state or federally, he's going to get hung out to dry. And I think she's going to use the guilty but mentally ill justification, because I think that's all she has. But sadly, young folks think it's okay to assassinate company heads if they don't like their policies. Whew! America, we got some big trouble facing us, and we don't shape up soon, because it will come back to bite us. Well, the 2024 election is over, and a lot of things changed in America. A lot of people that were in blue areas voted red, and frankly, it was a lot more than people even realized. What's happened is America's turning over. America's figuring out that, hey, maybe what we've been living under is not the best plan we ever had. And one state in particular I want to talk about, and that state is California. That's right, California, one of our largest states. Got 65, I believe, electoral votes, which ain't cheese, man. That's pretty good stuff. But here's an interesting map that just came out, and you might want to take a look at this. The map in California shows that most of the state, what I call the inland area of the state, most of the state is red. Now, what does that tell you? The people who live in the rural areas of California outside of Los Angeles and San Francisco, they'll tend to think, hey, they're more Trump fans. Where you take Los Angeles and San Francisco, that's where it's all blue. And that's where all the bodies are, relatively speaking, in San Francisco. So they have most of the representatives in the Senate and in the House. And because that is an entirely Democrat-controlled state, right from the Senate, the House, any Republican in the House or Senate has a snowball's chance of getting anything done. But here's something you didn't know. There's a lot of residents in the state of California that are saying, hey, we are tired of being in California. We want to secede. Now, what do you mean they want to secede? They want to get out of the state? No, they want to turn the state into another state. What they want to do is essentially divide up California. They used to talk about dividing up California as many as 5 or 6 states many, many years ago. And then recently it was, well, we want to divide it into the northern half and the southern half, because the northern half is totally different than the southern half, and it is. Well, now, the people in inland California, you have what you call the coastal people and the inland people. Now, the coastal people, that's Los Angeles, San Francisco, it's up the coast, up Highway 1. Well, they're saying, okay, let's divide the state down in half. We got the coastal side, we got the inland side, 2 states. Now, they've tried to do this before, but unless the legislature of the state of California allows them to put this on the ballot, that, folks, is not going to happen. That's right. No matter how much these people want to get things changed and have their state go into multiple states, one on one side, one on the other, the legislature ain't going to allow that. And you can almost guarantee that as long as they control the House and the Senate. And this is the same state where you're probably going to see next year, Kamala Harris is going to announce that she's running for the governor of the state of California. Why? Because Gavin Newsom is going to announce that he is running for the president of the United States in 2028. And he is the heir apparent that the Democrat Party wants to run the United States and run the country, much like, I presume, Joe Biden and his administration did. Just saying what's going on, just something for you to think about. So now you know, many in California want to have it divided into 2 states, but the powers that be in the state aren't going to let it happen. Just something for you to think about in case you want to secede from your state. Well, if you're a baby boomer, that's those of us who were born between 1946 and around 1964, take a spell and sit down, because I got a message for you. Well, it seems that life has changed, and I'm talking about those who came after us. Obviously, like I said, we're the baby boomer generation, post-war, if you will, after World War II, and, well, we lived a certain life. We were brought up because our parents were right from the greatest generation. Well, when we got married, we had kids, and things changed. And we started naming our kids after generations. You had Generation X, Y, Z, but the ones I want to talk about now are the Millennials. Millennials were born between 1981 and 1996. I happen to have two of those in my particular family. And the reason they call them millennials is because they were the first generation whose adulthood reached into the next century, namely the 21st century, the year 2000. And things have changed for them. They're a lot different than you and I. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but they have changed dramatically in their lives and how they live compared to us, older folks. Here's something I thought about. Department stores. Millennials don't like department stores. Heck, I remember department stores were at malls. You went to department stores, you got all dressed up when you go to Sears or Penny's or LSAers or whatever. Millennials don't do that. They're not into that. Here's something else they're not into. Cable TV. I checked with mine. They don't have cable TV. They've got what they get online. They buy specific packages from other companies, whether it's Netflix or whether it's this or whether it's that. But cable TV, they're not into that. That's just not their plan. And here's another weird thing about millennials. They're not into doorbells. You ever notice that? Yeah, they don't care about doorbells. What they do is they get on their iPhone, beep, boop, beep, boop, boop, and iPhone somebody that just says here. So the person who's going to visit takes a look at their phone, says here. They know their friends are there. They go to the door and let them in. Not into doorbells. Now, another thing I've noticed about millennials. They're not into golf. Traditionally, you'd go out on the golf course, spend, 4 or 5 hours out there, do some business, have a good time, relax with your friends. Millennials are not into that. They want to go to these special golfing centers, like Top Golf, I think they call them, and they just go up there and balls come out of a machine and they hit them and see how far they can hit them or what they can aim at. They sit back on couches and chairs and sit there and drink and eat and whatever. That's how they have fun. That's their dating mentality. So they don't go on a golf course, they go to Top Golf. Now, speaking of other things, homemaker-wise, millennials don't iron. Did you ever notice that? Millennials don't like to iron. They don't. Not into that. They're not into getting a regular pet food like you and I used to do with our animals. Their stuff has to be specially done, specially ordered. That's millennials for you. And also, they don't like regular wristwatches. They got to have something fancy, glows, change colors, talks to them, whatever it is. 66% of millennials don't even have a landline. You know what? Millennials are different than we are. They're changing the world as we know it. They have a lot of things they don't like, and they are, changing. Plus, millennials don't have as many kids as we baby boomers did. Society is dropping down in fertility, and that's how life is changing. So if you're wondering about your life, think about your millennials. They are changing the world as we know it, and they're doing it every single day. Many states have legalized recreational marijuana. Indiana, by the way, is not one of those. Will it ever come up? Well, it might. It's been talked about before. But many states around us, like Michigan and Ohio and other states around us, have legalized it. And people are, going not buying it. But law enforcement's had a big problem with this over the years because, how do you know when someone is stoned driving when you pull them over? That's the biggest problem law enforcement is saying, and they're still saying this. Turns out that the University of Colorado is now working on a breathalyzer that could be able to tell the amount of THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, is in a person's system if they're pulled over. Now, we all know how it works with a breathalyzer for drinking. We established how much drunk you can be. It used to be 0.1, and then they dropped it down to 0.8. And if you blew above that level, you were considered under the influence and drunk. And then you got a DUI charge. Trouble is, how do you do that when marijuana is involved? Well, right now, the only way to do it is pretty much through a blood test. But those tests can take days. And being able to prove things after days, that's going to be a tough one. And that's why law enforcement has been very, very reluctant to allow marijuana to be legalized in any state like Indiana, because they're saying we can't test it. And I happen to agree with law enforcement on this one, because if you don't know someone's stoned, hey, they're going down the road thinking, okay, everything is cool, I'm cool. No, you're dangerous. Now, can Colorado invent a breathalyzer? Maybe. And if they do, great. But here's the other problem. What is the level that you would consider to be, well, stoned? I mean, we know what drunk is, right? 0.08? 0.8? That's when they say you're above that, you're drunk. What level are they going to establish for the level of your level of tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, in your system qualifies you as stoned? And you shouldn't be on the roads. I don't know. That has not yet been established. But at least you know one state where marijuana has been legal for, 12 years? They're trying to figure out how to get a breathalyzer to test people. They realize this has turned into a problem of people being stoned and driving. And now, the University of Colorado is working on a breathalyzer. Maybe will be successful. Nobody knows yet. But then they still have to determine what level of THC qualifies you as being stoned. All those questions need to be asked. And right now, nobody has answers. I'm just telling you what could be happening in the future. The good Lord willing and the creek don't rise.